how to work with an array of objects. So here I have an employee class which I created in the last tutorial and taught you how to auto-generate the code through the Eclipse. I just simply removed the Java comments so that you could concentrate more on the code rather than having to concentrate on anything that we don't really need for this example. So here we have got a constructor overloaded, default, and then bunch of getters and setters. Now we would like to create another class to establish association. We're going to call this one a demo employee class, and we will going to include a public static void main. And in this class we will going to learn how to create an array of objects. Just like you can create an array of integers, you can create an array of doubles, you can create an array of objects of any class. So far we've only looked at an array of objects of string type in one of the earlier tutorials. For example, the one that I introduced you earlier today, Intro to Java Arrays, where I created an array of names, which is actually an array of objects. So now in this example, we would like to create an array of employee class. So employee class array, employees equals to new employees, size 3, for example. So now what exactly the syntax means is I would like to create an array called emps of type employee. It's an array because I've used square brackets. It's not one object. I would like to allocate some extra memory, not just one block, but multiple blocks of memory. And all blocks must be of type employee, and I would like to allocate 3 of them. Do not get confused between this statement and instantiation, because this is one extra thing that you got to do when you're dealing with array of objects. You got to declare the array, and then you got to instantiate each individual object separately. However, the good thing is that since all these objects are in a continuous blocks of memories by the increments of element number 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, it is very easy to instantiate all of them in a loop. For example, I could now be generating a loop which will going to run from 0 all the way through the length of this array, and in this loop I will going to simply call upon the constructor of the class and one by one instantiate each of the element of the array. So that's basically what this code is doing. First time the counter is 0, so it goes to the first element of emp's array, instantiates it, then counter becomes 1, second element it gets instantiated, counter becomes 2, the third element gets instantiated. So you have to declare an array, and then you got to instantiate each individual object separately. Then you can be using these objects to be calling the getters and the setters and to be doing the whole 9 yards. So if I would like to call the setter upon one of the objects of an array, I could simply say I would like to call the emps array, the first object, to call the set ID and assign it a value 101. Then call the same object and then call the set name and give it a name, and then call the same object, but this time call set salary and assign it a salary value. So all of these things can be done individually as if you would do in a regular setup for variables. Then I can copy paste these efforts and do it for my second object. This is the lengthy way of doing it. I'm going to be showing you the improved way of doing that and make those changes. And here you have 2 objects where each one of them call their respective setters, and then pretty much put in the values here. And then if you would like to call the getters upon both of these objects, you can simply write a loop here, which will going to be very much like the loop that I wrote above. So I'll just copy this one, because we programmers are a bit lazy, so we like copy paste a lot. And then I could write a system.out.println statement in which I would like to display all values that pertains to each one of the objects. So I would like to call the setter on ID, name, and salary for first object, then the setter on ID, name, the getter on ID, name, and salary for first object, and then the getter on ID, name, and salary on the second object. So in order to do this, I'm going to simply write it in a loop, and I'm going to write my message out here. So what I've done over here is I have an array with 3 elements. The first element has an ID of 101, name Amy, salary 100,000. Second object or second element of the array has an ID of 102, name Abby, and salary 180,000. The third element has an ID of 103, name Jason, salary 200,000. Then I quickly wrote this loop that I was talking to you about earlier, that I wrote with one long system.out.println statement, in which I'm running a loop and I'm going from one element to the next. However, every time I go into the loop, I'm pulling all 3 properties for every element, then doing a line separator so that you could see the difference between each one of the element after it gets printed. And voila, here's my code for all 3 of them separated by the line separators. The benefit of using an array of objects is, if I were to do it otherwise, I would have to write my system.out.println statement as many times as I would have the number of objects of the employee class. But introducing an array makes your life so much easier that you can actually loop through the process and do things much faster. Here, if you can see, this code also needs to be tremendously reduced. If I could actually get my inputs from user as opposed to hard coding these values, then I can actually streamline this process as well, that I can actually run a loop, and every time I'm in the loop I accept 3 values from user, populate the 3 elements of the array, go back in the loop, and then take the next 3 inputs for the next element, and so on and so forth, which we're going to try to cover in our next tutorial. So stay tuned, keep watching, and looking forward to seeing you all in the next tutorial. Thank you for watching this one.